Okay. It's gonna turn right this time. That's weird. Okay. Let's go that way and see what it says. Ooh, this is gonna be tricky. Yeah, okay, good job. I saw that oh, it's going a different direction than mapped, and this is the direction I came originally, so it's good. I wanted it to take this way because it's more scenic, maybe less traffic, which makes it less interesting, but it's definitely more scenic, and it was a more interesting route, I think. Wow, it's definitely driving with a lot more intention. On the highway, it's actually a little too aggressive and too fast for me. I have to dial back the speed. But man, on these back roads now, it's really starting to drive with purpose. It doesn't feel like it's directionless. It sometimes felt like, even a few weeks ago, it still felt like it needed, a couple of days ago, even last week, I was still complaining about it. It feels like it needs guidance. It needs other cars around it that it can follow, to show it how it should drive, what speed it should drive at. And I found a lot of times still without other cars around, FSD would be under the speed limit. Now there's nothing around, and yeah, it's driving at the speed limit or even over. The only time, like now, right now it's below it, but it's because it was going through a turn, so it slowed down. But driving at the speed limit is perfectly good. Last week still I had a case of, I think the speed limit was 45, and it was just meandering at 32 because there were no other cars around. It seems like they've unneutered it. A lot of times the car driving, and it feels like it's neutered. It seems like the behavior is intentionally, for lack of a better word, castrated, where it can't do what it wants to do. It's been held back. It's like a dog on a leash. And now it feels like it knows how to drive, and it's being allowed to do what it wants to do. I definitely found that starting to change over the last 2 weeks. Yesterday, I definitely saw a huge improvement as far as that's concerned, and today it's being confirmed. So that's really good. That was one of the few last frustrating things about FSD, was where if there's no other cars around, it would just meander. The problem I have with it now, when there's cars around, is that it's too aggressive. It chases cars all the time instead of, just picking a speed and sticking to it. I think I came from the right earlier. It's definitely taking a different route now. It's going directly to 94, but that's fine. I came from one of those roads. There definitely are weaknesses.
Turn right onto State Route 94.
There definitely still are weaknesses in traffic. It breaks down a bit. It will pick inefficient lanes. It'll sit behind cars instead of going around them. And again, that is just because I think the car is being held on a leash. It's not being allowed to be more assertive and be more efficient, because maybe the car doesn't understand or interpret the lanes properly. It doesn't know or think far enough ahead that, hey, there's 4 cars here. I can go around them and still get back into this lane to make my right-hand turn a couple of 100 yards down the road. So instead, it's being conservative, picking the safe option and just sitting behind cars. So there's issues with, with that. It definitely would sit there too long. So definitely some weaknesses still. I definitely have had issues with road closures and lane closures, or lane that's been blocked off, where it would go into that lane that's blocked off and then try to drive around the cones. But other than that, it's easy to focus on what is wrong and what it's not doing. We could all pick 1,000 things depending on your experience. Your mileage will vary. But if I look at the progress,
Now turn right onto
it's
State Route 94.
absolutely bonkers what has happened in the last 5 to 6 weeks from where I'm sitting. It's still improving on a daily basis. And okay, cars from the left. It's gonna creep now to see. Yep, it's clear. There's a car coming, but it's way far back. Yep. Okay, good job. This is something that before I got this Robotaxi update about 5-6 weeks ago, I got nothing to prove that I had the Robotaxi update. I can just see it in the way the car drives. It's radically different. This is not the same as V13.2.9 that I still have officially, but since 5-6 weeks ago, my accelerator inputs and my disengagements has dropped by 90%, and I haven't had maybe one disengagement that I would say you could consider safety critical, although if I let it play out, I don't know how it would have ended.
Turn right onto Route 15.
But I did have a case the other night where it stopped at a red light and then it pulled away. It looked like it was going to go. The intersection was clean, right? And if there were a car coming, it probably would have braked, because I've not once been in a case in the last few months where it felt like the car is gonna drive into something or doesn't see something. But yeah, it obviously was not right. It's a mistake. I was really surprised by it, but that's why I'm always ready to take over. But just the behavior in the last 2-3 days again seems it's more driving like I would like it to drive. It's driving with purpose. It's driving like it's directed. Even on especially neighborhood streets, 25-mile-an-hour zones, it always seems a little lethargic. It's now even that is improving in the last week or so, and it's getting to the point where I'm like, wow, it's almost the way I would like it to drive. Granted, I'm probably a more aggressive driver than most people and more risk tolerant. There are lots of people that drive way more aggressively than me, and as I'm getting older, I'm driving less aggressive and slower. A lot of people will probably say on the highway I drive like an old man, and maybe that's true. I'm happy to go 70 miles an hour on the highway. I have no need to go any faster. But yeah, on more local roads, I will go a little quicker. I like to drive quick, but not fast. Yeah, it's FSD just gives me the feeling every time I get in the car, I feel like I'm gonna have a disengagement free drive. That's just what I expect now. Doesn't happen every time, but I am surprised when it's not. Yes, I take over. Actually, my previous driving out to where I just came from, it drove from the street that my house is on outside of my driveway all the way into the dirt parking lot. I'd actually pulled over in the dirt parking lot. Didn't do a good job of parking, but that's okay. And you know, parking lots, whether it's paved or unpaved, that at this point I don't think it's something that FSD really has been trained to do, and they focused on it. I think it sounds like the AI is just not very capable of doing it really well at human level. I mean, in parking lots, most of the time, it feels like the car is going half the speed that is safe to go. It feels like it's being held back. It's not doing what it doesn't know how to do it. So once it gets to a point where in a parking lot, it feels like it's directed and efficient, that's when I think it's pretty polished, because all the other areas is busy getting there. Yes, the long march of nines, you know, 10,000 miles disengagement free, 100,000 miles, 500,000, 2 million miles. Yeah, that will still go for many, many years, but I believe within 12 months, will be unsupervised, and FSD should be able to, you should be able to go to sleep. Yes, there's going to be accidents. I think if people expect there's not going to be accidents with FSD or robotaxis, or that people aren't going to die, that's absolutely absurd to think that, because no technology is perfect, and all technologies from the day that they start entering the mass market, let's say at 3% is where adoption typically takes off, but let's say any technology, once it reaches 3% adoption, it still continues to improve massively. Your smartphone today is not the phone or cell phone you got 25 years ago. Same with your flat screen high def TV. It's not the same as the one you got 15, 20 or 20 years ago that was available. Gasoline engines, the internal combustion engine was invented in 1886, and they're still improving. It's 139 years later, and they're still improving. In terms of how much power they can produce, etc. Some people will disagree about how reliable they are, and yes, that is true, and some of it is by design and engineered in, but for all practical intents and purposes, if you measure how much power engines can make, they're still improving, and you can decide whether you want to make, Toyota builds reliable cars. Why doesn't most other car companies? Well, it's a choice. It's corner cutting. The Bugatti, for instance, the Bugatti Veyron, which was the most powerful and fastest car in the world, when it came out, I can't remember, early 2000s, 2003, 2005, something like that. But let's go with 2005, exactly 20 years ago. It had a W16 quad turbo, 8-liter quad turbo engine, right? And it made 1,001 horsepower. The new replacement of the Chiron replaced the Veyron. I forget now what it's called, but I think Bugatti names their cars after famous French racers, and I don't know whether it's Formula One racers or what, but don't quote me on that. In any case, the new engine that Bugatti is putting in the new car that's replacing the Chiron, it's a hybrid drivetrain, but the gasoline engine is the same 8-liter W16 engine, right? But it makes 1,000 horsepower with no turbos. In 20 years, they've gone from requiring 4 massive turbos on that engine to make 1,000 horsepower to now doing it naturally aspirated. So all technologies still continue to progress long after they've reached mainstream, or even once they've reached market saturation. So to think that FSD and robotaxis should be perfect, and especially perfect the day that they were released, is a ridiculous notion. No technology is perfect. All technologies kill. Bread kills, butter kills, sugar kills, soda kills, ice cream kills, everything kills. There's nothing that hasn't killed human beings. The 4th largest killer of human beings is dogs, man's best friend. Dogs kill over 40,000 people a year. And if you look into it, you will probably find, and I haven't, but you will probably find that most people that get killed by dogs are children, right? Defenseless babies. So what are we going to do about that? Are we going to ban dogs? So the whole idea that FSD is going to be perfect or should be perfect is ridiculous. 100 people die every day in accidents on roads in the United States. 1.2 million, 100,000 a month, 3,500 roughly a day die on roads globally. 3 times that amount get permanently disabled. In other words, 10,000 people get disabled in car accidents every day across the world. So expecting FSD, to be perfect and people not to be injured or die is ridiculous. Of course people are going to die. Of course there's going to be accidents. As long as it's lower than the rate that human driving is at, and over time that'll improve, right? The big benefit is, let's say every year in the United States, 5 million 16 or 17-year-olds get their driver's license. Well, let's say 3 million, right? So when one of them make an accident because he didn't know something or did something wrong, right? All the other of that 3 million are are potentially going to make that same mistake if they get under those conditions. They're not going to learn from that one person making that mistake. But with FSD, once there's an accident and they figure out what has caused the accident, they can now gather the data, train the system, and now deploy that data to the fleet, and now all the cars, that problem is solved. None of them are going to make that mistake again. Where with humans, that 3 million is going to make, all are going to have to learn that not to make that mistake all on their own, all individually. There's no group learning. There's no benefits of one person making a mistake and all the others learning from it. Yeah, some of the stuff can happen through regulation or whatnot, but yeah, people tend to be ignorant of most things because there's so much to know in the world. So yeah, I think in 12 months, I would probably feel comfortable to fall asleep behind the wheel. It doesn't mean I'm going to take a deep sleep, but if I'm tired and sleepy, I would nod off. I mean, the car's already at the point where I feel I can do that. Not quite there, but I feel comfortable with it in most conditions, under most circumstances. Yeah, I'm not going to, and Tesla's not going to allow me to. And I would like to see a lot more data, but at the rate of progress, where we going, if I look at where this thing was 12 months ago, hell, if I look at where this thing was six weeks ago before I got this shadow mode update, I can honestly say version 12 and version 13 especially, although they've made huge progress and could do impressive things and improved a lot, I was never really happy with them. I was still very frustrated. I got version 13 in my first drive. Within 4 or 5 miles, I got a critical disengagement. It wanted to go up a closed off road, right? So yeah, that's not very impressive. I'm sorry, it's just not very impressive. So this version that I'm on now for the last 5 weeks, this is the first time where I'm like, wow, okay, this is impressive. I very rarely, if ever, get frustrated with it, and I'm a person that I get frustrated quickly. But this version, finally, as I said, my disengagements, my accelerator inputs has dropped by 90%, and my frustration level, or my frustration with the car, the FSD doing things that I don't expect it to do, or not doing things that I expected to do, that has also dropped by over 90%. I honestly, version 13.2.9, as good as it was, I still didn't think it was good enough that the average man in the street can use it and become comfortable with it. I think a lot of people could, but it would take a lot more to do it. With this version, I think finally, if somebody drives this for a day or two in different circumstances, they're very going to quickly, learn how capable this thing is, and that they can trust it most of the time. In other words, yeah, you're gonna have to learn where the weaknesses are and where you should be more vigilant. But overall, and you can anticipate when the car is gonna do something wrong. For instance, I had a case a few months back where I was going down the road, one lane this way, one lane coming the opposite way, and I had to make an unprotected left turn, and the turn was coming up and the car was not slowing down. I could feel that, okay, the car is not slowing down for this turn, it's going way too fast, it's gonna do something wrong. It's either gonna miss this turn or try to do the turn too fast, or try to do it later. Wow, that was good. This is the hardest acceleration I've ever felt FSD doing. What happened is we overtook that truck that was in front of us, but in the left lane, this guy that's passing me now with that big F1, whatever it is, FX4, that guy was coming up at really high speed, but it was a big enough gap for the car to take, but it had to really go and accelerate, and it did. I've never felt it accelerate that hard. It always felt like, okay, why is the car not accelerating hard? Finally, it's starting to do it at human level without being scary, or without you feeling that, wow, it's going too fast. In any case, so the car had to make this left turn, and I could feel the car is just going way too fast to make this left turn. And what ended up happening, when we got to the left turn, there was a little island and another left turn further on, but you couldn't turn left there. That turn was for the cars coming from ahead of me that would make the right turn to take the exit that I had to go left. And the car wanted to go around that. So that's when I, immediately I realized that the car's not going to make the left turn, right? And I held my hand on the wheels. It didn't try to turn, but then it slowed down, and then I could see it wanted to make the left turn at the wrong point. So I've not been in one case where the car was going to do the wrong thing without me feeling, by the car moving the wheel, or either accelerating or not accelerating, or braking or not braking, or turning on the turn signal or something, that I wasn't prepared to take over. There's always clues or cues that the car give you. So in any case, this version finally, it's still improving. I mean, just in the last 2 days. Last week I saw some more changes. This week I'm seeing even more, and the car is just driving more and more like a human. Yes, there are things that it does that's not like a human. For instance, it doesn't like to cross painted lines. When people take turns, they cut corners, right? If you got to make a left turn and there's a stop sign at that intersection, then you normally cut across the painted line. The car wouldn't do that. It goes it forms a perfect line around the paint that doesn't touch the paint. So that's very artificial. That's where it's not going to drive like a human. Maybe over time, as their confidence level gets higher, they'll allow the car to drive more like a human. That stuff definitely feels artificial. And because it has to take those perfect turns to not cut over the corners and stuff, it causes the car to go slower before turns, which holds up the traffic behind it. Like for instance, if it wanted to turn off to the left into one of these parking lots, it's going to slow down a lot to make a really slow turn into that parking lot and do it really slow and comfortably, right? And it feels artificial because that's not what people do. People a lot will move over into the shoulder to let the traffic behind it pass through. I know it's probably not the safest thing always to do, but you can, if you're a tentative driver, and then you can make sure that you pull over into the shoulder safely before you turn off into a parking lot. So there's things like that, right? Everybody's going to expect something different. The car's never going to drive exactly the way you want it to do. There's certain constraints by regulations and road rules and whatnot. Like for instance, NHTSA forcing Tesla to come to a full stop at a stop. That is annoying, but you know what? It's the law, right? So some laws, I guess, are more flexible than others. Safety obviously overrides everything. But yeah, I'm blown away by this. And the 10X model that Elon mentioned yesterday that's coming, is that 10X on version 12? Is it 10X on version 13? On which version 13? 13.2.9? I don't know. So but if it's 10x above 13.2.9 or 10x above the Robotaxi, then whichever one it is, if it's 10x above 13.2.9, and like I've been saying, FSD is solved. FSD is solved. It's a matter of more data and more training. And if the next model is 10x what this is that I'm driving now, yeah, you will be unsupervised wherever regulation allows within 12 months. And I'm being super conservative when I say within 12 months. It's possible that if they release it the end of next month, like Elon says, which I don't think it's going to happen. I'm figuring on, well, the beta testers, a few beta testers might get it, let's say by early November, and the rest of us will get it for Christmas. If that happens, yeah, I think you'd be able to use FSD unsupervised anywhere in the country where they allow it by January next year. Conservatively, I'll go within 12 months. But I think if we get this version by November, by January, yeah, you'd be able to go unsupervised.
In 1 mile, take the Interstate 80 east ramp on the left toward New York. Now take the Interstate 80 east ramp on the left.
this thing just wants to go. I can honestly say highway driving,
Now
people
turn
can't
exit 47
complain.
on the left.
People won't be able to complain about FSD being too slow on the highway. This thing on the highway, it just wants to run. I mean, I used to use, it's in standard mode now. I used to use hurry mode on city streets and standard on the highway. I've never used hurry on the highway, it's just too fast. Now it's getting so fast that I have to dial the top speed down. Normally my default's at 85, and if it's at 85, a 30% offset. Tesla actually recommends a 40% offset. I mean, the car just wants to go 80 all the time. I feel like I'm racing or chasing cars all the time. So I'm getting to the point where standard is so fast on the highway and so quick that I would almost rather drive and chill. It'll still go fast and chill. It'll still do 75 miles an hour, but it won't chase cars as much. It'll stay in the right lane most of the time. And on city streets now, it's getting to the point where I always use hurry on city streets. Now it's getting to the point where I'm using standard. Standard is quick enough that standard is good enough on city streets for me. It used to be too slow. And even in hurries, sometimes, okay, there's a car approaching from the rear. It should be going over. I don't know why it doesn't. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I should have done that a little sooner. Our friend in the blue truck is not going to care, but the guy in the black truck wouldn't have cared that it's not me holding up the traffic. much earlier. And then oftentimes it would sit behind cars. Now it seems to be coming over later. And also I've seen cases where it would actually pass cars before coming over, where before it used to be more conservative, like almost a mile before the exit, it would just come over and sit here in this lane and wait to exit. Now it's more like a human, where it'll see what's going on and decide based on that. It still doesn't do it quite as well as a human, but much safer. A lot of humans will accelerate all out and hit 80, 90 miles an hour and then, you know, cut in front of cars
in
50 yards before
turn
the
left
exit.
onto Pleasant Valley Way. Now turn left onto Pleasant Valley Way.
This is a type of intersection FSD had troubles with until about 2 months ago. They didn't know how to interpret this. And now, okay, good. Responding pretty early to change lanes and go around their car. That is something that, again, also 2 months ago, it wouldn't do very effectively. Sometimes it would go over in time, but most of the times it would just not react soon enough. So yeah, anybody using FSD that's been using it for the last, since it's been wide release, I think it was last April 24 or May. I mean, if you've been using FSD, and especially I was, you know, obviously back then I had a hardware 3 car and then went to hardware 4 because they, you know, first they favored hardware 3 cars. The models were all developed for hardware 3 because there were more hardware 3 cars in the fleet. And then when they switched over to hardware 4, I you know, got a hardware 4 car for many other reasons. It wasn't just for that, but that was a big reason. But in any case, if you've been using FSD since April last year, and you saw how terrible it was, the first iterations of 12, and how many issues there were on V12, and then even, like I said, V13 to me was, you know, was so hyped up. My first drive, 4 miles, critical disengagement. It literally just tried to go up a blocked off road with a cop standing in the intersection to, you know, regulate traffic, and it was just going to drive right towards him. So in any case, if you look at the progress since then, and V13, I got that just right around Christmas, the progress has been off the charts. And the really impressive thing for me happened 5-6 weeks ago, when I think what I got was a shadow mode upgrade to the Robotaxi version, and it's still improving. I mean, just in the last couple of days, I've seen a bunch of huge improvements. So if you look at the progress since last April, FSD is solved. That's what I see. Whether people agree or not, but if you use it and you've experienced over that time, to me it's clear as day. Because if you think of what's coming, a 10 times larger model, 2-3 times the GPU training capacity, and more data, you know, more learning, smarter AIs, then yeah, I think within 12 months, and I'm being conservative, I think you will be able to drive unsupervised anywhere where it's allowed. Okay, I think enough. I'm gonna switch off the video now. So thanks for riding with me, and good thing I'm not even charging a fee yet.